Good morning. Welcome to Conversations with Buddy. It is a Friday morning around 10 a.m. I'm excited for my guest today. This is the very first episode of my podcast, and it's coming to you live from the Rec here in Keizer, Oregon. And I have the privilege of interviewing one of my closest friends on here today. It is none other than the Tim Davis. He's smiling and chuckling now. Just a little bit about Tim. Tim is a husband, a father, a friend, a previous mortgage loan officer, a pastor, a business leader, and connector. The thing about Tim, he knows everybody in Salem and Keizer, I swear. And he recently started a nonprofit organization, which we'll talk a little bit later in the podcast. And the list goes on. This is a short introduction of Tim. It doesn't even come close to all that he's accomplished and is currently doing, but it's certainly a start. So please help me welcome my good friend, Tim Davis.
Thanks, buddy. That's hard to live up to right there.
Dude, not a problem, man. You do it well. Well, hey, today we're gonna ask Tim a few questions, get to know Tim a little bit better. I know him pretty well, but I'll bet there's some things I learned about Tim today that I didn't know. Tim and I go way back to probably the mid 2000s. Would you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tim was a mortgage guy, kind of like me, and I can remember my first interaction with Tim. We were working at the same company together, and I remember Tim coming to my office, and I'm not sure why he came to me, but he came to me and said, "Hey, I think I'm being led into ministry." That's what I remember.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the thing I remember about you is it's funny how like certain things I don't remember, but other people remember, and there's certain things I'm really clear about. Like it impacted me that maybe, first of all, that you would come to me, but you know, God has a plan for your life, maybe differently than what you thought. And it sometimes comes as a question like, I'm doing mortgages, but I feel like I'm being called into ministry. What do you think? I'm like, that's a great question. Well, something you should pray about. Maybe you'll find that that's where you should be. So let's take off from there. Actually, let's go back a little bit. I want to hear a little about your upbringing.
Sure.
And some of those transitional pieces. So first of all, where were you born? And tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah. So I was born in Peoria, Illinois. My parents divorced when I was 2. My brother was 5. We moved to Oregon. Ended up, the fast forward version would be that we ended up moving 21 times during my school years. And my mom remarried a couple more times. So there was a bunch of inconsistent, both male role models and maybe lacks of stability, in my life. And my mom was a very consistent, nurturing, loving, encouraging person to me, but with a really bad picker, So, yeah, and so flash forward, athletics was something that I was pretty passionate about and had some success or whatever, and going through through middle school, high school, and so on. My mom got sick with cancer my junior and senior year in high school and passed away like 4 months after high school. And so might have had some opportunities at scholarship or college, but I was pretty spun out by her death and my need to pay rent. So, wow. Yeah. So, from there, I, went out, got a job, advanced pretty quickly in the organizations I was working with. Mostly early on was in retail management and stuff, and so made money, bought Corvette, drank tequila, chased girls, and
so you lived the life that a lot of people live, trying to find what it is they're looking for. Exactly. And how'd that work out for you?
And not so good. Thought so. And then somewhere around my late mid 20s, I met this Jewish carpenter, Jesus, and and began to just radically change my life. And I looked at all those things I think that I thought manhood was, and realized they were actually empty. So,
interesting. What brought you to that point where you met this Jewish carpenter?
Yeah. People were investing in my life, and the people who were followers of Jesus. They weren't religious about it. They weren't, didn't feel like I was being evangelized, just brought alongside. And so then saw aspects of their life that I wanted to emulate and move towards. And so, I don't, like a lot of people might have that date that they turned their life over and salvation came, and they've got the month, the date, and the year. I don't necessarily have that, but certainly somewhere in that process, a radical change began to happen,
So you were mid to late 20s at that point in time?
Yeah. So
similar story for me as well, but...
Yeah, and I wake up from with that, realizing that I want to be a husband and a father someday, and my tool belt's pretty much empty. So
got it.
Yeah.
So from there, your mom passed away.
Yep.
High school, college, you get in the workforce. Tequila, chasing girls isn't working out. You find Jesus. Then what?
Yeah. So I've always been an entrepreneurially minded person. So I had a few small businesses throughout those years, and I'd like to say I think I had 4, and 3 were successful, and 1 wasn't. And so, but I had this passion growing for Jesus and for the Bible, and got plugged in church environments. And as leadership follows you everywhere you go, then I found myself eventually on an elder board, and opportunities to teach the Bible, but still being a tent maker, so to speak, in the mortgage business and finance and stuff. And so, but the pull definitely became too strong towards ministry, and so that's when we started having that conversation.
Got it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Let's talk about marriage and kids, ministry, and then I'll eventually get to the point where I want to talk to you about where you're at today and the nonprofit that you started. So walk me through marriage.
Yeah. I have 2 wonderful kids. I got married at 28 and have had 2 kids, one at 30 and one at 33, and had the white picket fence and, the South Salem family and that type of thing. And but 7 or 8 years in, that marriage began to implode, and so that was a real time of challenge and growth in my life, and grateful to end up, with the level of connection and visitation and all that with my kids. So I just moved my business stuff to work from home, so I could be around the kids more, and just started staying close to Jesus and walking through that. And so, grateful to have 2 wonderful kids, and went about 7 years in that process, and doing some single adult ministry all over the country, and having opportunities to speak and engage with others. And then I met Joy, and so that was 15 years ago. Yeah. So I've been remarried for 14 years, and it's been amazing. So
it's interesting how God allows pain in our life, not because he wants to inflict pain, but it's probably the only way to keep us humble. And we all have our story of pain if you've been alive long enough. And I would also say, if you haven't experienced any pain, it's coming.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've had my fair share of pain. But I think being humble, and I think what I know about you, Tim, is I know the latter part of Tim. I didn't know the Tim prior. And you're a brother in Christ. You're a personal friend, somebody I can count on. I've enjoyed the relationship that we have. And today, what we do together in ministry is pretty awesome. But yeah, pain's a great teacher. It's never fun. I never tell anybody it's fun going through, but the joy that you get after you go through the pain, from my own experience, is amazing. Talk to me about marriage after a divorce.
Yep. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have gone through this type of pain. Unfortunately, it happens.
Yeah.
And marriage isn't guaranteed. It's something you got to work at every single day. So walk us through that real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I just, going through the breakup of that, I really just focused on Jesus. I dove into the Bible, what it has to say about marriage or remarriage or divorce and those type of things. And I kept myself sexually pure for 7 years as I really was content where I was. And, but the ministry opportunities and me meeting Joy was obviously divine. And I tried to shake God off for quite a while, because here was this, wonderful person that was following Jesus her whole life. And here I am, this guy who was drinking, partying, single dad of 2, but obviously God won out, and I finally submitted to His will, and it's been the most amazing 15 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
The whole word of submission. Every time I see your wife, Joy, I see a smile on her face. I see the joy, no pun intended, or pun intended. I see the joy that you guys both have in marriage and your relationship. It's really inspiring that while life isn't perfect, you can have joy. You can seek the Lord, and you can work through things.
Yeah,
And,
He's a forgiver, and we all make mistakes, certainly.
Yeah.
I think that coming back to something you'd said earlier, pain is a wonderful teacher. I think that the thing that I've learned to do more quickly is when you go into a challenge, at some point, you need to get to the spot where you're like, okay, Lord, what do you have for me in this? Fill in the blank, whatever challenge that is. And I recognize that I'm going to have an opportunity to see you glorified, and I'm going to have an opportunity to grow. And so I want to see the most of both of those things. And so earlier in my faith walk, it would take me a while. I might play the victim card. I might blame others, and then get to the spot where I'm like, okay, Lord, teach me everything, And I'm in a spot in my life where that might have taken months, and then down to weeks, and then down to days. But maybe, in the last 10 or 15 years, it's minutes before I'm, okay, Lord, I recognize that you're in this, and you haven't fallen off your rocker, and I want to learn everything I can about this, and you're going to use this unique opportunity. Now I'm going to gain some authority in a subject I didn't care to learn, right?
Yep.
But you're also going to be able to use that in my life to reach others. So whether that's, if I look at those past things like learning how to co-parent and blend a family, and all those things that I didn't plan on, but have worked out phenomenally.
Yeah.
So,
Just a few takeaways there is you could choose to be a victim, but if you really want to honor God and do it His way, He's going to take you through pain to grow. And it's kind of like going to the gym. If I go to the gym and I never stress the muscle, then it never grows. And so muscle only grows, through pain. After you do a good workout, a leg workout, you might feel pain. That's a good thing. So I always look at pain. Well, I've learned to look at pain, and I'm really good at telling others to look at their own pain. Now, I may need to take my own advice, but pain is something that God will take you through to grow you. It's like a muscle. The other thing is, before you and Joy got married, you guys co-authored a book. And I forgot to mention author as one of your titles, but tell us about the book that you guys wrote.
Yeah, it was a unique experience. We were, she was born and raised in Wisconsin, and I'm here, and so there's a lot of big hurdles that God needed to overcome. But we wrote the book together as a process. It's something that's been a very rewarding process. We went at it differently maybe than most people. We didn't kiss until the day we were engaged, and some of those other things that I wouldn't have thought possible. Maybe if you took a litmus test of Tim at 21 or 22, but God's done some really cool work, and to speak at different conferences at single adult stuff, and seeing somebody with your book in their bag or their purse, and it has a bunch of sticky notes to it, and so whether I made a bunch of money off the book or not is really irrelevant. It's seeing that people, what you've went through and give out, people can use for their good too. So. Yeah. Well,
I've personally read the book, and it's loaded with lots of questions. Obviously, I was married by the time I read it, but I gave it to my girls. I have 2 daughters, and I think it's phenomenal, the questions you guys asked each other and how you grew through that. So I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Let's, this is great, by the way. I love to hear the stories. Great stories are often bathed in pain. It's not that your life was phenomenal and everything's perfect. Trust me, in my life, it isn't perfect. I don't care what anybody says, but I love to hear the stories of not how good somebody is or how much success they've had, but the pain they've overcome. Yeah. And we are overcomers, as we know. And that's the part I love most. I'm inspired by that. I've spent my life, the last 24 years doing what I do, hearing people's stories. That's actually one thing I'm really attracted to is not the business I'm in per se, but the stories that I get to learn and be a part of their life. That's really inspiring. So you've done lots of different things. But after the mortgage industry, you got into being one of the pastors at a local church here in Salem. And through that, you now are part of the community, and you do some pastoring, or I should say leadership outside of the church. Talk to me about what that looks like, and when did that begin?
Yeah. So the church I'm part of, Church on the Hill's been something that has always been outside the church walls, trying to invest in the community. Yeah. So there was a natural outreach. But, coming from my life, you talked about overcoming. I mean, I can play victim cards, like going through multiple divorces as a child, and I lost both parents, at early ages, and so I got lots of reasons for me to go sideways. But at the end of the day, the God that I serve, I don't think spends any time in a rearview mirror, and so He's given me this glass half full version of what to do, and so our friendship has been obviously instrumental. Other men's investment in my life, I wouldn't be where I'm at without that, and for sure, and so. You and I and Sven and others were investing for long periods of time. Guys come along and needed some advice around whatever, marriage, finances, and this and that. And then I remember a time us getting together for coffee, and we really felt like God wanted us to duplicate ourselves, and we didn't really know what that looked like. And so I remember us just thinking, fasting, praying, and then we started inviting other guys to do what we were doing, investing in other guys. And we didn't set out to start a 501c3. Maybe you remember it that way. I don't.
I don't know.
Right? And then you flash forward now 7 years, and Valor Mentoring, the nonprofit, has 26 employees. 200 volunteers. We have a $2.5 million community center in Bowling Alley. We have 12 partnerships all over the state of Oregon. We're in foster care, juvenile system, public school, private school. We have production studios and podcast studios and live stages, and it's nuts.
What's interesting about this is we all have different giftings, and my gifting isn't your gifting isn't my gifting. So I see what you do, Tim, and I'm exhausted. I gotta go take a nap. True story. So I find it really fascinating and interesting that we all, as a body of believers, bring something to the table. And what you bring is really amazing to me, because I can't do what you do. I swear you know everybody in Salem, Keizer. The whole way that Valor Mentoring was able to purchase the bowling alley in Keizer, the town and country now is called The Rec. That's a story in itself. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, I can try to do that in a really quick way. I serve on 6 nonprofit boards, and I was leaving a meeting with Dick Whitnell. We go to walk to each of our cars, and he just made a casual comment like, "Hey, Tim, Don and Ann really need to sell town and country lanes." And we got in our cars and we drove away, but I couldn't let it out of my head. And so the real short version is I came about a month later. I came down to the front counter and said, "Hey, is Don here?" And Don came to the counter, and he's like, "Hey, don't you have something to do with Valor Mentoring?" I said, "Well, I'm one of the founders and the president." He said, "I just got chills all over my body." He's like, "Do you want to buy the place?" And that's when I knew the Lord was in it, because I hadn't said anything, to anybody yet about that. And so yeah, flash forward now, it's been 2.5 years, and we've renovated just about every part of the building, and it's 500 people a day, and we're leading the nation in a Kids Bowl free program, and there's public and private and civic meetings happening here 15 to 20 times a week, from Marion County commissioners to chiefs of police to everything you can imagine are in the building having meetings, and we're engaging and connecting and trying to just continue to do our part, right, to impact the community. So
I think the one thing I love most about what Valor Mentoring by the Rec, while that's really cool, and doing the outreach to the local community, I love seeing Don, who previously owned the wreck for
53 years.
53 years.
Yeah.
He still shows up every Wednesday morning for Bible study upstairs with the same guys for the last 30-some years.
Yeah.
He still owns the place in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. He gets the ownership of this and the joy. Honestly, that's what really brings me the most joy of being a part of Valor Mentoring, the wreck. Yeah, we get to change lives every day of mentoring men specifically. And but I love Don's heart. I love it. I think it's really cool. I was just thinking, you and I, we've been friends for 15 years. Sven and you and I have been friends. Well, you guys have been friends for what,
20-something? Yeah.
20-some years, me and Sven as well. But this time, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. Mm-hmm. And any good investment, it takes time. You don't build muscle overnight. You build muscle over time. Just like with any relationship, it builds over time. And again, 15, 20 years of a great relationship with God in it has been amazing. And he's just beginning. That's the good news.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on the wreck? And then I got one more question for you that I'd love to have you share about.
Yeah, gosh, I just think the thing I don't think I've highlighted enough is the relationship investment that others make, like, you, me, and Sven's relationships. I mean, we've each seen tough times, and we each have the responsibility and opportunity to hold up a mirror to each other when it looks like we're tired, short-tempered, needing a break or whatever, And so I don't know where I'd be without those types of relationships, and then me being willing to give permission at any level to men in my life, And I think that's the other thing that I hope other people get is that, accountability seems like a harsh word, but it's valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. We come to the table as mentors, but anytime I'm mentoring somebody, I don't know about you, I always remind them, hey, yeah, I might be mentoring you, but you're also mentoring me.
Absolutely.
I don't come to the table thinking I know really anything. I just come and see what the Lord has in mind. And I don't have an ego when it comes to you correcting me like, hey, buddy, your thoughts here are a little off. Cool. Thank you for helping me understand that, because I can't always see my blind spots. And I think that's what mentoring is all about. It is a two-way street. It's not a one-way dictatorship. So I think that's part of that. The question I wanted to ask you, or just maybe have you elaborate too, was a great story you've told me before. It's about your dad. So if you don't mind, walk us through a little bit about that. I think it's a great story where we can possibly end on. It starts out a little rough, possibly, but I think it ends up great.
Yeah, like I said, my parents divorced when I was 2. We moved to Oregon. I saw my dad once at 6 years old, and then I didn't see him for 30 years. And so he had came to visit Oregon, I thought to see us, but probably it was to sign papers so that we could leave the country, because we moved to Brazil after that. And I signed a baseball to him that day, and then we didn't speak or hear for 30 years. And then I went to a retreat, spiritual, getaway retreat, and God really blanded me. And I feel like I got exposed for my unforgiveness towards my dad, and I got a chance to get rid of that. And within a week or two, I'm on the phone with him, and he's in a military hospital dying of cancer and has 6 weeks to live. And so I fly to Florida and meet up with him. I take my brother with him, and both nurses are Christians. And he's down to 2 boxes of possessions in his life. He had remarried for 18 years and then divorced again 4 years before this experience. And but in those 2 boxes of possessions he had left was that baseball that I signed to him when I was 6 years old. And so where Satan might have said that, he doesn't care, and those types of things, that just wasn't true. He remembers us driving away and him wanting to call the police. But he knew that my mom would be the better parent. And so if you went back in the 60s, right, or, that much more traditional roles and so on. So, yeah, but long story short, the nurses are like, hey, we should get you guys to come to our church, And I'm like, my dad's got stomach tubes, the whole bit. Like, can we get him out of here? They're like, absolutely. Church has got a band. We got a potluck Friday night. So go down there. Great message from First Peter. And we're hanging out at the potluck afterwards, get an opportunity to lead my dad to know Jesus, and which is really cool.
That's awesome.
He gets better, gets off most of his medication, moves to Oregon to meet the 5 grandchildren that he never knew he had, reconciles that second marriage, moves back to Florida, and then about a year or two later, the cancer came back and he died. But the night before he died, he called me, and he said, I'm at peace, I'm ready to go home, and so... Pretty cool. That's a really fast forward version, but God is a reconciler, and so, and I guess when we go back to what I said earlier, okay, what's the authority? What's the thing that I need to learn out of this? Out of that was I'm really good at seeing unforgiveness in others, and I'm really good at picking it out of myself, because there is no gray area in God's world for unforgiveness, no matter how bad someone has wronged us. So when we forgive, then power happens. And so,
Amen.
Yeah.
It's a great story. Just to finalize and wrap up, how does this affect the way you lead Valor Mentoring? Because I know you give a lot of statistics based upon national averages of how many kids.
Fatherlessness.
So just maybe in on that note, how did
Sure.
that relationship with your dad help you now in Valor Mentoring?
Yeah, looking back, it's really what we're doing, with meaning you, I, and all these other folks, is investing in the fatherless in our culture. So 43% of every child in America is in a home without their dad.
Wow.
90% of every incarcerated person, 90% of every runaway, homeless runaway is from a fatherless home. And so that's where we're trying to focus. We need those relationships in our lives in order to be successful. And that's essentially what Valor intends to do, right? Through our one-on-one and group mentoring. It's something that makes us unique is we have music, media, and the arts is all a part of a mentoring tool and a way to engage the community, and then we do service, and then we run the rec. And so, if this was a business, we have an endless clientele base.
Wow, that's right.
There's as many mentees waiting for a mentor as we can recruit to find more mentors to invest in their lives. That line has never gone down. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, Tim, obviously we meet often, but it's a great time to just hang out with you and learn a little bit more and hear some stories that maybe I've heard before, but really that everybody can hear your story.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a great family. I really didn't have, I had mom and dad who were married for almost 50 years, but I too was on a wrong road. Without Jesus, I didn't have any hope, and it was 28 before I came to know the Lord. And what I learned was accountability. I had to show up. I literally show up every day, every week, every month, every year, because it's the only way I can do the right thing. So, well, thanks for taking the time out today, and I enjoyed this time. Of course, I'd do this again. I think we could probably do it again as we progress with Valor Mentoring and just life. I think we have a lot to share with people, not through our success, but through our struggles.
Amen.
So looking forward to that. So thanks for the rec to host this podcast. It's been awesome. Next time we'll have a new guest. It'll be a surprise. And we look forward to bringing Conversations with Buddy to you again. Thank you so much.